Wow.
So that was the means by which he was restored.
This is why we love, by the way, this is probably why we love It's a Wonderful Life.
Right.
Right? That's how it is, right?
That's exactly it.
It's like through no fault of his own, right? He's driven down into the dirt. And he's in that mediator role, right? Like he saves his brother's life.
He's literally a mortgage lender.
He's a mortgage lender. Yeah, man. Like, come on. He like gives people homes. Like, let's go.
Yeah.
You know, and he stands between people and this spider that would suck their life, like Ungoliant, right? It's the world spider of his little town is just like sucking the life out of everything. And so then he's given this vision of like what he's been, and when he comes back, in one sense, nothing has changed for him, and it's like it is the realization that everyone else has about him that brings about his restoration, right? I mean, like the scene is exactly that. They all come like
that's exactly right.
Dump money on the table, man, and then of course there's the tree of life in the corner, right?
right. With the angel, the star on top,
right. Well, Jess, thank you for doing something in person with me. This is it's definitely new for me to get to talk in person. And we're both in mid-America, and we're up here. My family and I are visiting KC.
Kansas City,
yeah. And as I was telling you when we started, my two experiences of Kansas City have been that I came up here for a giant Pentecostal charismatic conference 10 years ago when I was in college. And now we're up here visiting a Byzantine Catholic church. So Kansas City is my
spiritual.
Yeah, it's a destination. It's like a religious destination or something. But yeah, when we realized we were going to come up here, my wife thought that I should get in the same room with you and talk, because I've loved Job for a really long time, and I know you've put a ton of work in on understanding Job. So yeah, here's what I would love to do.
Okay.
I'd love to tell you why it is that Job has been so important to me.
Okay.
And I would love, on one side you may say, yeah, I definitely know all of that, and I'm going to give you a whole bunch more insight about that idea. Or maybe it's fresh for you, and then
for sure
and then we can work through it. So when I'm trying to remember when this was, probably 10 or 15 years back, my first exposure to Job was we know that his friends are wrong because God says that, but it all seems really right, and so we don't really know how to teach Job. So just, it's in Scripture, so it's true.
And this is like in a church you grew up?
Yeah, this is in the church that I grew up in.
What kind of church did you grow up in?
It was a non-denominational sort of, there's a lot of them around where I grew up where it's like 60% Southern Baptist, 40% Pentecostal.
Yeah.
And so
same thing.
Yeah. So very, we looked at Scripture. That was the thing. We had, our statement of beliefs could fit on, it's 200 words or less probably. Like Nicene Creed, the Bible, and then we're like, a lot of the stuff we didn't even know to articulate. Like, we're Congregationalist, So we pick our pastors, and then we're under. There's nothing above the church, that particular church body. But yeah, I again, I don't ever want to come off negative about any of that experience growing up. I loved that church. It was really hard. Actually, that was one of the hardest things that I've done recently, is leaving that church. And I got. It's actually interesting that this little corner has actually been strangely connected with that, because when I came back after I got married to my hometown, we continued to go to that church which I grew up in, and I would preach there about once a month. And when we became Catholic, it was that's it on lay preaching. You don't get to stand up in mass and preach the homily when you're a lay person. But like, I love all of this stuff, and so I kind of went into it not knowing how it was all going to turn out, which is actually that's a great, probably will connect with some things later, but not knowing how I was gonna get to see that stuff come back to life. And so getting more involved in the online conversation with this stuff has actually been really healing for that. It's been like it's the thing I wanted to do. I wanted to be able to talk about this stuff, and it's granted me that. So it's been wonderful. But anyway, so with Job, I'm trying to remember when when this first clicked with me, I think it was when I was on a road trip with a friend of mine, and I just listened through the entire book on like as an audio recording, all in one go, and it started to finally click with me that this is how I saw it the first time. Fundamental issue with the judgments that Job's friends are making is that they assume that the story is over. So they say things like, I think it's in the first response to Job by his friends. He says, God will never leave the righteous ones down. Like he'll lift them up. Mm-hmm. He'll raise up those who are righteous and those who follow him. And then right as you get a little, you go through the dialogue cycle a few more times, they start to say, well, God hasn't done that for you, so obviously you sinned. Right? Mm-hmm. They're sort of building up this argument of, well, hey, we can look at your life and we can make this judgment now. And the irony to me is, right, because you've got the structure of Job is you've got like a little bit of narrative frame at the beginning and the end. Mm-hmm. Just in terms of sheer words, very little is actual narrative. The vast majority of it's this conversation, which is also weird. It's kind of like Tolkien and Beowulf, how everyone thought Beowulf had this really badly written structure for a long time until Tolkien came along and wrote The Monsters and the Critics, and he said, no, look, the abrupt transition from Beowulf's glory days to him being this decrepit king who goes and gets slain by the dragon is actually the point of the story. It's like, if you see that, then you understand what it's like to be a person, because everyone gets old and then the dragon comes. And so thinking about that in terms of Job, I think I could look at it and think, oh, that's a structural flaw, but trying to come to it with some humility and say maybe that was on purpose. It's like, it's there to say, okay, so we've got the beginning of the story, we've got the end of the story, and then wisdom is something like, how do you operate in the middle of the story? And so it seems to me to be like this, that the wisdom when you're in the middle of the story is to hold on and to not assume that you're at the end yet. And so I think that blows out into all kinds of other things. But this basic notion of withholding the wrong kind of judgment because you recognize that you haven't gotten to the end of everything yet. Mm-hmm. Because those judgments are true. Like at the end, Job is lifted up, right? And God doesn't leave his righteous ones destitute, and he doesn't abandon the humble. But that's at the end. You have to get all the way through, and you have to wait for everything to, let's say, resolve. What do you think of that reading? Because to me, that's like the main. I hesitate to say this, but like the main point of the story is to say that, like, because it's in the middle of, it's at the beginning of the wisdom books of the Bible. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, that's another weird thing. Why is it the beginning of the wisdom books? Why is Job? Because it seems to, we read what his friends say, and they're basically just saying the book of Proverbs. Yep. It's like you could probably, that'd actually be an interesting thing to do, to go through and look at like how many of the Proverbs are they saying. But they seem to be, the narrative seems to be doing something that makes it not clear that let's say is as straightforward as you might want to take it. Mm-hmm. And so it's interesting. That's kind of the other part to me, is like you've got Job, and then you've got Job's position relative to the entirety of Scripture, which is that it's like the gateway to wisdom. Job is the gateway to wisdom in the way that it's been arranged, and so that has really fed my idea there that there's this thing of, you've got all this wisdom, you've got sort of proverbial wisdom, but there's something above that, which is, it's like knowing where you are in things. So what do you think about that? I know you've done it. I've heard some of your stuff on Job, and it's been wonderful, but I haven't listened to all of it.
Trying to find the point of Job is difficult, because the book of Job is always playing with different extremes. So like even like you said, one of the points is maybe to hold on. Like Job just has to hold on, but there's points in there where he's clearly not holding on. He's given up, and he wants to be. He's like, why doesn't God just kill me and put me in the ground? Like, what is the point of continuing? There's no reason for any of this.
I mean, that's his opening statement. It's not even that hidden. He's just like, why wasn't I a stillborn baby?
But he bounces back between these extremes, and so another time he'll be like, I know my Redeemer lives, because he'll say stuff like, my hope is that the righteous will be able to speak to God, or there's some part that says that. So he like he has hope, and then he also doesn't have any hope. And so he's always bouncing between these extremes. And so it's hard to get a bead on exactly what to take from the book of something that you should do, or something that you should believe, or something that you should. So this is the thing, because God at the end says Job spoke what was correct. And you look through like everything that Job spoke, and just like you're saying, the friends are basically speaking Proverbs, and they're speaking tradition, and they're speaking just basic wisdom. Like, let's listen to our elders. Let's listen to tradition. Let's think about these things, rationally.
Let's look at our experience, right? We've looked around, right. The experience of life of our old age. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then, oh, here's my phone call. And we'll get back to this in a second. Yo. Yep, I'll render it out.
All right, thanks, dude.
All right, bye. He's a tough customer. Let me just get this set up real fast.
Yeah. No.
Okay. So the friends are basically quoting Proverbs tradition, and the friends there's a progression. Like, so generally speaking, the friends are defending sort of an idea of retributive justice.
Yeah.
The theology of I forget the word that I've used before.
It's like, it's sort of a consequentialism, right? That's my reading of it. They say, if you do this, if you do good, good will happen to you. If you do bad, bad will happen to you. And so I've kind of realized that I'm actually on a mission to take down consequentialism as like a moral frame.
Well, here's the thing is like that's kind of true, because if you like behave correctly, like the idea behind behaving rightly is that things will go rightly for you in the world. And so like,
but on what frame? That's on what time frame? Well, that's my question. This is my whole thing with it. It's like, on what time frame?
Here's what I think the book of Job is doing. It's trying to show the possibilities for like that. What the friends are saying is like basic wisdom.
Yes.
Like, do good, avoid evil,
repent of your sins.
Repent of your sins. God is good. God doesn't make mistakes. God is just. Like all these things that are just basically sort of foundational Judeo-Christian truths.
Yeah.
But what it's doing is it's presenting a scenario, because Job's basically a parable, and it's presenting a scenario where this isn't the case.
Well, it's like what is, this is the way that I put it. It's like, what if the worst thing possible happens to the best man possible?
Yeah, and that's the question.
Yeah, like, can things still hold together, basically? If you're given that scenario.
Here's the thing. Job totally falls apart. And even the words he uses, the things he says, he's not just saying anything. Job does something very specific through the whole middle part. But what he says is impious. It's not what the wise man would say. It's not what the righteous man would say, because he says stuff like, God has hidden his face from me. He hunts me like a lion. He gnashes his teeth at me. He tears me limb from limb.
He's like shot me with his arrows.
Yeah, I'm filled with his arrows. I'm drinking his poison.
Yeah.
And then he'll say stuff like, you knit me in the womb. You put me together. You raised me up. Your goodness created me, and you breathed your spirit in me. But this you hid from me, and you crushed me, and so like this is Job doesn't give you any way out unless you just be like, okay, Job, like the the easy way out for people is like, well, he was obviously wrong about something, or God was saving him from some sort of sin that was hidden in his heart. Like, don't we all believe in original sin? And it was obviously something like that, because...
But you can't get away from the first part where it's just like, he was blameless. He was blameless. Like, he was perfect. He was blameless. Like, that's what God says to Satan. He's like, have you considered Job? He's perfect.
Yeah.
Like, my servant Job is perfect. Like, that's what God says to Satan.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, if God, like, if you're gonna, that's the weird thing. Like, his friends when his friends say, like, you must be sinful, it's like they're actually contradicting God. I mean, they don't know that. But like, we as the readers, because we've had this framed, we've got this parentheses at the beginning, we know that they're actually saying something that's directly the opposite of what God has said to Satan in that, bizarre
right. And
scene.
so Job's friends are basically telling him to lie. Which his first friend Eliphaz says, his first friend Eliphaz doesn't really make an accusation, his first speech. He basically says, this is what I know. He retells this dream about
is so weird.
The spirit that glides up and basically says, who is righteous before God? Man is just a moth that's crushed. Man's just dust. And then he basically says, Job, if you humble yourself, God will restore it. Or he doesn't even say that, really, I don't think. He says basically, like, if you are the man you claim you are, God's going to restore you.
Right.
And then but then Job comes right back and basically just says, that's a bunch of BS, and you're unhelpful, and here I am struggling and dying over here, and you can't even muster up any sort of wisdom whatsoever. All you have is empty sayings. And then his next friend comes up, Bildad, and his accusation is against his family. He says, if your sons and daughters sin, then they've fallen into their punishment.
Yeah.
And we know from, no one knows Job doesn't know what God said, the friends don't know, so they're so you can have some empathy for almost anyone involved if you just think about it, because he's like, of course your kids were destroyed. They'd fallen into sin, and Job doesn't have any of that. And then I think it's Zophar, and finally just is like, who do you think you are? And then the friends start basically building a case against Job, which Job refutes.
Well, what's interesting there is that he says something like, would you condemn me in order to justify yourselves? Because
God says that to
Job. God says that to Job as well.
Mm-hmm.
But Job says it to his friends because you've got this interesting thing where they're working through this, because I don't want to, I have a lot of sympathy for his friends. Like, this is why, this is the way that my understanding of Job actually is, I guess it's like an attempt to save them as much as possible, because what they're wrestling with is, like, if you don't have the right way of looking at things, then you're gonna fall back on this consequentialist mindset. Which the problem with the consequentialist mindset is exactly this. Okay, so you say, if you do good things will happen to you. If you do bad things will happen to you. It's like, okay, that is a great way to orient to decide your actions. What it's not good for is to look over and judge people. I think there's a major difference between saying, I'm going to act rightly in order that I can bring about as much good as possible, and another thing to look over at someone else's life and say, well, because X, Y, or Z happened, then clearly you're suffering under some, say, unrepentant sin. Mm-hmm. And so, but because when you live that way and then you look over at Job, because Job is an edge case, right? He's sort of like a limit case. And it's like, look, if we've been working under this idea that I can make a judgment on how righteous they are based on the outcome of their life, well, now Job's messed up. And if we can't find the hidden sin in Job's life, then my own notion of my own righteousness, because every indication is that their lives are going well. Mm-hmm. It's like, if I can't figure out the hidden sin, then my own ability to judge my righteousness it's all out the window. I have no idea if I'm in right standing with God anymore. So I got to do something. So I have a lot of sympathy for that, because they've been answering the most important question, which is, am I on the side of goodness and truth and justice, right? Like they need it, and they've been judging that based on how are things going, basically. And when everything falls apart for Job, if they can't figure out a way to condemn him, then they're totally lost.
Yeah. Well, see, this is like, it's not just a disaster for Job.
Yes.
Because if what Job is saying is true, it destroys the whole worldview of the friends too.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm after.
And so, and it's helpful to think of these guys as actually good friends coming into it, because they sit in silence with him for 7 days. Mm-hmm. And they wept when they saw him and they couldn't recognize him. Like these weren't just like, these weren't just, fair weather friends. Like they heard about the news, they arranged to get together to come and help him. And then all this happens. And you'll notice when people are suffering, like someone's going through a hard time, it's difficult to go through that with them, because like maybe they'll say stuff like, this is not fair, why is this happening to me? And you want to kind of explain some of that stuff away. You kind of want to help them like ease their mind with stuff, and you'll say stuff like, well, everything happens for a reason, or something dumb like that. And stuff that is you are trying to help the person, but you're also trying like to defend against the terror of this hitting you too. Because if what Job is saying is right, that he's a righteous man and God has struck him down, like who's safe? Who's safe?
Yeah. Who's safe? Like who's next on the block?
Yeah. And is this just arbitrary? Is God just like, is God a maniac? And so
so what do you think about, because I definitely see where you're pointing at with this notion that Job doesn't leave you anywhere safe. He doesn't leave you somewhere where you can say, okay, I've got it figured out. If I just do X, Y, or Z, then we'll be okay. But
it doesn't allow you to make a judgment.
It doesn't allow you to make a judgment. That's exactly right. Because in the end, God does say, look, Job's suffering, righteous suffering, and this is getting very much into the Christological aspects of it, but like Job's righteous sufferings makes him a capable intercessor for his friends.
Yeah.
And so it seems to me that there is this notion that Job's apparently pointless suffering is redeemed. Now, does it ever answer the question of?
No, it's okay. Not even. It's not even
push
like
back on that. Then
it's not even like his suffering is redeemed. It was. This is the making of the mediator.
Okay.
This is the process of how the mediator is made. And this was the whole point all along.
Okay. So you see that as different from redemption.
Redemption is a part of the story. The friends are redeemed.
Okay.
Job's suffering isn't redeemed. Job's suffering was it's just what is. There's no getting around it.
Okay.
And so, there's reason for that, but the book starts out with an accuser in heaven. It ends up with a mediator on earth. So we don't hear from Satan again. What we have then is a man who's actually seen God face to face, and then can intercede, and then even.
I know, it's just like, man.
But here's the thing is like, okay. Everyone likes Job because he's rich, right? Mm-hmm. And because he's wealthy, and because he's so successful.
And he's wise.
Like he talks about when he goes to the gate of the city where all the men would gather to sort out business things and maybe even disagreements or whatever. Job says that everyone would be quiet when he. Jeez, I'm getting choked up already. Everyone would be quiet when he shows up. They would put their hands over their mouths.
Yeah.
And he says his words would be like the latter rain for them. And so Job is a wise, good ruler, king, business person. He's just the guy that is able. He's
the guy.
He's the guy. And
he's the guy.
So when he's struck down, like everyone sort of is like, what is going on? And then,
well, we don't even have a notion of that, really. We just assume that everyone's at the top, like they deserve it. Like, how many people I'm trying to think of people in my life who are like that, where I just look at them and I'm like, you've done everything right. And if I had someone like that in my life and they got struck down, I mean, it would just be devastating. We don't have like a good king. Like if you had like a good king,
and we're a lot more cynical than
we're so cynical, absolutely.
Well, anyway, like Job, like all of Job's friends and family, and they all mock him. Like he talks about, he's like, even the men who I wouldn't even have like with my sheepdogs, their sons are like singing songs about me to mock me. And so Job goes from this place of being like, respect or whatever, all the way to the bottom where he's being mocked or whatever. But the interesting thing happens is after the whole whirlwind experience, all his friends and family that knew him before come voluntarily back to him to comfort him.
And is that before he's restored?
That's after
his fortunes, like his.
They all bring him a piece of gold and a ring.
That's right.
It is his restoration.
It's like, come on, man! Like, that's Revelation, where the kings of the earth are bringing their glory into the heavenly Jerusalem.
Yeah,
right.
But they act. That was Job's restoration.
That is fascinating. So his restoration comes from everyone coming and bringing their riches to him, and offering that up to him,
because they saw. Okay, so here's and this is the reason why God orchestrated all this, because like. So you're comfortable with
putting a reason why in there that's maybe outside of the narrative. I'm just trying to figure out, like, because earlier it felt like you're saying like you're not supposed to see a reason why.
Well, you're not supposed. There's no like what Job goes through. There's no pragmatic steps to take.
Okay.
There are some things that Job does. Like he doesn't lie. He doesn't betray his own integrity.
Well, so that's interesting. You were saying Job falls apart, but then I was like, but God says I mean, I think about integrity and I immediately think about holding together. So there's a sense in which like he doesn't fall apart.
Right. Well, he falls apart and he doesn't fall apart
at the same time.
like because he obviously goes into these rants and these laments that aren't really. I mean, we talk about the friends saying Proverbs, but what Job says isn't far from some Psalms. Like some Psalms are really deep and dark and lamenting and
which, I mean, they're not like Proverbs. I mean, there's it almost, I don't want to, let me know if you feel like this breaks it down, makes it too simple, but there's something like, there's like a set of wisdom that's good for operating, and then there's a set of wisdom for something like suffering.
Well, here's the thing. It's exactly what Sherry and I were talking about in that talk, it's like you just keep going.
Yeah.
Like, and you don't try, you don't do, like, the friends say, repent. God's good. He's faithful. He's merciful and just. He'll restore you if you repent. But what Job is like, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
To try to get out of this. Yes. I'm not taking an easy way out, and I'm going to tell. And here's the other thing is Job at the very beginning, after he loses everything, he says, the Lord gives, the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. And it's sort of this like objective view. You're like, who am I? Like, the Lord is good in good times and bad. Who am I? Blessed be the Lord. And he falls down and worships, tears his clothes, weeps, all this stuff. And then it's not until he gets sick and his wife says, now the wife has like one line, but you'll notice that in her short little thing that she says, she says something that God said, and she says something that Satan said that no one else knows in the story. This is all this stuff that happened in heaven. She says, are you still holding on to your integrity, which is what God said to Satan. He said he still holds on to his integrity.
And Satan says, if you touch his skin, if you afflict him, he will curse you.
And then she says, curse God and die. So Job's wife has an insight to what happened in heaven.
Wow.
That no one else in the story knows.
Dude, that's wild.
It is wild. Like, so then she introduces death also at the end. She says, and then die.
And then he immediately goes on that incredible monologue about, his friends show up.
Right before that, he says what? He doesn't say, he says, should we accept good from the deity and not evil?
And not evil. Yeah.
So, he says first, like, you speak as a foolish woman would speak. He doesn't say you're a fool. He says, you're speaking like a foolish woman. And then he says, should we accept... And he doesn't say the Lord, like Yahweh.
He says Elohim.
He says Elohim. He says the deity. Yeah. He says, should we accept good from the deity and not bad?
Yeah.
And it wasn't a statement now, and it wasn't a question, and it was actually from his own perspective. It wasn't from a universal perspective. He's like, he's thrown down into his body.
Yeah. Should I not? Yeah.
And so he's taking his own perspective seriously, or he's speaking something from his own perspective. And then he goes on his chapter 3 lament.
Yeah.
Which is why was I born? And this is a perspective. And so all of what Job says, and even like you can look at Psalms of David and stuff, like it's all from their perspective. And God says, you spoke what was right. So there's something valuable
about facing, let's say,
and being honest about what you see.
Saying like, this is actually wretched.
Yeah.
Like, this is actually wretched.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so...
And not try to lie for God. And just be like...
Boy, that's... Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Okay, so are you familiar with C.S. Lewis's distinction between religion, magic, technology, and science? Have you heard this?
No, I probably heard it, but I can't.
Okay, so he says, everyone would look at that and they'd say, and this is, early 1900s, he'd say religion and magic are in one bucket because they deal with the supernatural, and science and technology are in one bucket because they deal with the natural. And he says, that's actually not the fundamental distinction at all. He says, religion and science are on one side, and magic and technology are on the other side. He says, the much more fundamental distinction is, what is your orientation towards things? Religion and science says, I am going to try to conform myself to reality, in that sense, just to say what is, right? The science primarily dealing with, say, intellectual conformity to natural patterns, and religion with the confirmation of your soul to all reality. And that magic and technology are fundamentally about altering things in accordance with what you're after. And so a very pertinent thing there to realize is that the underlying impulse of technology and magic are the same, right? That they're bringing about through different means, either through natural or supernatural means, the thing you're after, whereas religion and science are this. And so that, but I mean, I really like his notion of religion and science there, which is saying it's just truth speaking. It's truth speaking everywhere and always. And so when you bring that up about Job, it's like, yeah, don't lie on God's behalf. Like, never, like, what? It doesn't get better. Your lies don't get better if you go higher up.
Yeah, and what's interesting is it's so close to what Peterson says, like, tell the truth, don't...
All the time.
Yeah, like, don't, or at least not lie. And that's something that Job takes seriously. And the interesting thing, Job, like, Peterson sort of takes, it's sort of like a moral imperative to do that. Job's reason is not moral at all. He says, I loathe my life. I don't even care what happens to me anymore. I'm just going to speak.
He's just done.
Right. And so...
Yeah.
There's something beautiful in that, because That's just what people do when they're done.
Yeah, they
don't hold back.
Yeah. Well, okay, but here's what's okay. So, and I've been bringing this up, and I have not been able to find it. But St. Thomas Aquinas says that the most deep desire that people have, or the thing that's most fundamental to their happiness, is to know the cause of things. And he's pulling at least a little bit there from Aristotle, who says, "Happy is the man who knows the causes of things," which is interesting that he's talking about agriculture.
And finally,
when I think about that, it's like, everything's been played out, right? But there's still this urge to like know why, right? And this is like the whole Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I remember this 10 years ago, looking at that and realizing, well, this is stupid. Like, yeah, as like a general pattern, that's great. But all the time you'll find people who will be like, if I don't get the thing at the top, none of the rest matters. Like, I'll stop eating until I know why, right? I'll be homeless until I know why.
Right.
And there's a sense of, now there's other people who won't do that, and they don't want to look at the top, but there's something about people being stripped of everything else, and they're like, all right, now I know, the thing that I wanted to know all along is, why? Dang it.
Yeah, and that's where Job is too.
Yeah.
And so he frames everything in a courtroom scenario, or at least where there would be a judge or an arbiter or a mediator, someone to come between him and God to sort this out. And he basically says, if only God would tell me why. And he actually ends all of his speeches with this metaphor of signing these court documents. Basically, like, I've said my thing, I want God to answer it. And he says, basically, God, I want you to come indict me.
Yeah.
So, like, an indictment's like bringing up on formal charges. He's like, come indict me and I'll wear it like a crown. I'll march around the streets and it will be my pride that I will know what I did wrong.
Yeah. I mean that...
And then this is... then God appears in a whirlwind and is like, what are you saying? Like, there's no indictment coming.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so then I've got several follow-up questions to that. So my first one is, are we in a different position from Job when we're suffering? Because the impression that I get with Job is something like, I mean, I'm pulling a little bit of this from like some Bible Project stuff I listened to a long time ago, so I don't know like how good the scholarship is, but like he's sort of like the parallel. He's in this like parallel world to the Jewish patriarch world. Like he's sort of like this like he's not really connected to Abraham. He's like he's in the land of the East, right? He's the most righteous of the men of the East, and so there's a sense in which he's disconnected from the revelation, right? He doesn't have the promises that are given to the patriarchs. He doesn't have the Jewish law. He doesn't have Sinai. And so there's this in his case when he's suffering, there's sort of this basic trust, because I think that's what we're saying, right? He's essentially saying, I trust that there's a reason, and he's just not going to come up with anything other than that reason. He's not going to make another reason. So when I think, well, for one thing, I have Job and he didn't have the book of Job. And so like I see this resolution at the end of it. The other thing is that we also have the entire book of Scripture, and I think you've kind of been pointing at this a little bit, but there's this sense in which Job is the entire Bible, right? You have a creation and fall, and then you have a redemption. You have Genesis to Revelation, and you have him being formed as the mediator in the middle of that. And so, and the shape, right? Job is like it's like a textbook U-shaped story. Everything's great, and you couldn't imagine it being better, and then it gets worse than you could possibly imagine it being, and then it gets even better than it was at the beginning, which was unimaginably good. But you have that paradise, fall, paradise, except that you also have the incarnation and theosis, so it's like actually unimaginably better even than the Garden of Eden was. So it's like we have that, and when I think about, okay, I'm in the times that I'm suffering, there's a difference between like the why and the where that the suffering is going. And I don't think I get the answer to why, but I do think I get the where. There's this sense of faith of where. It's like, I know where eventually. So the question for Job is something more like, do I trust that Elohim, right, is going to, let's say, pull it all together? And it seems to me that my situation is something much more like, do I trust that Christ is using this, or that this is something else that's going to be brought into the heavenly Jerusalem. I feel like I'm just like, I have an unfair advantage over Job in the sense of like how, let's say, psychologically difficult that would be. What do you I mean?
I mean, there is something to that where Job is sort of, I mean, there's different sides of this. Job is like, if you compare Job and Christ, Job goes into it like he has no choice, and then Christ chooses it.
Yeah.
And so there's that, but then also Job is just the story of humanity, because the existential thrownness of just being like, I don't have a choice to be born.
Yeah.
God made me, and now my life is crap. So what's going on? And George MacDonald hones in on this, and he's like, if God makes you with a need for him, then you can claim that of him. So God has to answer you. And this is actually something that Job discovers in the poetic dialogues. Is he actually discovers that God has to answer him, and God will answer him. And like Job, and it's not like it's something very deep that's not rooted in sort of a pride or something like, God better answer me or else He actually finds the reasons for it, and
the reason is that he's been created. He says like, as your creature. As your creature, which when we were singing the Vesper service last night, that actually you will long for the creatures that your hands have made. You'll turn again towards your creation. Like that's in the Vesper service, which is interesting because Vesper services are always about dying. By the way, if you didn't know, I didn't get this until I went to we had two Requiem masses in a week, and I sing in the choir there, so I went to those and I was like, oh, this is all my evening prayers. That's weird. That's really weird that like the evening prayers that I do is like it's the funeral mass just like shortened up a bunch.
And
it's like, oh yeah, that's what it is. Every time I go to sleep, I'm practicing dying.
Sleep is a death.
Sleep is a death.
Well, and death is a sleep.
And death is a sleep, and it's about trust. There's this Wendell Berry poem that I read in college and I can't find again, but there's this one he's just meditating on sleeping. And he says that we are carried through, what does he say? Something like he's talking about you're giving the trust that allows you to surrender your consciousness when you go to sleep. He's like that we are carried through we know not what at a cost beyond our understanding. Something like that.
Yeah, that's deep, man.
So, I mean, do you think that Job is basically experiencing death for like 35 chapters or something? Like, is that what's happening to him?
It is a death, but it's not death.
It's not death.
Like Christ actually goes through death, like actual death.
Right.
And so it
feels like he's like asymptotically approaching death. Well, he really is.
He's as close as you can.
He's as close as you can. I mean, that's actually what's happening. Yeah, absolutely. He's like all his stuff is taken from him, right? Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I shall return. His body is broken to pieces, then he's literally in the dust. I mean, like his body is sort of turning back into dirt.
And plus he loses his reputation. He's lost his health. He's even lost
his agency. All of his agency.
He's lost all his agency, his will to live. He's lost any and he's even, in his lament about his death, it's not just like, oh, now that these bad things happen, life is no good. I wish it was better back when I had stuff. Like, he doesn't say that. He says, no, this invalidates everything. My life before, this invalidates all of my life, because he says, I wish I was never born. And so he's like, it would have been better off if I never saw the light of day.
Well, look, Jess, that is so profound. I mean, this thing that I've been thinking about a lot, this is, well, and again, I'm actually getting this from Job, and it's that like the meaning of our life actually comes from the future, right? Like
you see it retroactively.
Yes, you don't know what things mean when you're doing them, and you find out later. And so that means two things. One, it means the capacity to go through this experience like Job, where you say, because you can't get back there. And so if you were crushed, whether from externally or from moral degeneracy, Like, it'll actually even destroy the good things you had in the past. It's like C.S. Lewis talks about this in, I wish I could remember where, but he says, the sinner says, well, let me just have this. It's in The Great Divorce. I think probably through the words of George MacDonald, the fictional George MacDonald, right? Who's the Virgil. Right. He says, he's like, the sinner says, well, let me just have my one sin and then I'll suffer through hell. And he's like, but when the sinner gets to hell, he'll realize that even then, when he had that pleasure, like, that was hell too.
Right.
And there's there's this notion in which, like, the story of our life is actually, we're being pulled forward. We think, like, of our lives being, like, built up. It's actually, and this is in the conversation I had with Karen Wong, like, this is the whole Thoma's notion and Stephen Talbot's notion about purpose in biology, final causes, is exactly this, which is, we think of organisms as, because this is how we've been taught, as this sort of building up of biochemical processes. No, not at all. I mean, that example of the eyes on the tadpole, where you can move them around down here and they'll still get back up there. It's like, because they're being pulled forward into the future by the destiny of the tadpole, which is to become a frog. And so there's this notion of that our past is being constantly transformed by our present, which was the future of that. And then, like, there is some final future that will mean everything for everything that ever happened. And that's the eschaton, right? That's right. That's what's coming. And so there's this sense in which, I mean, that's got to be part of, that's something like Job's declaration, his prophetic declarations, right? Like, I know, like, in my flesh I will see my Redeemer. In that is this notion that, like, there's actually a relevance of the past to the future in, like, a real meaningful way. Why else say it? Like, why else say it unless it actually could mean something for that moment? Which is...
Well, you can even be very practical about it.
Yeah.
Because, like, people will go through terrible tragedies, and then, it may take them years or decades or whatever, and they'll tell the stories, and then you'll ask them, if you could change anything, would you? And very often people will say, I wouldn't change a thing. And you ask why? They're like, well, of course it was terrible. I don't, like, wish that on my worst enemy, but it made me who I am, and I don't know who I would be without that.
So there's this. So this is where. Yeah. So we had.
So it's retroactive.
Yeah.
But and
when you're in it, you can't see that though. Right, and
you can say it was redeemed, but also, like, it's hard to distinguish between the tragedy and how it affected you and made you who you are.
No, but you can't. I actually don't think you can.
Like, you don't exist without the tragedy.
Yeah.
In some sense, and so there's this is what I always say is like, those are the things that make you.
Well, look, so
this is like all of Job is God creating the mediator, or we can just say the man, because man is supposed to be a mediator between heaven and earth.
I mean, look, he's in the dust, and then the whirlwind, which is like the breath of God, shows up and draws him up out of the dirt. The breath of God draws him out of the dirt. It's like, that's Adam.
Right.
That's Adam being made.
Right.
Yes.
It is the creation of a man from man's perspective. And
let's go.
And how you it's how things would appear to you as you're being made.
Which, look, if you can that's so good, Jess. Okay, but think about that too, and you're like, okay, well then what is a man? And apparently a man is a kind of being that has the capacity to pull together something as bad as Job's experience into something that is thankful for Job's experience. Like, that's really powerful. Whatever that is extraordinarily powerful. Because, come on, how do you do that?
Yeah, we don't know.
But Job does, in himself, through grace.
Yeah, and there's all these things that Job was tempted to do to shortcut that.
Yes.
Was to lie, to repent when he didn't need to be overwhelmed by arguments and tradition and all this stuff, and even like, and it's not even like the traditions were bad. They were the good traditions. This is the thing. Like, Job is sort of like, Job is about being born, and like, you're not always being born, but there's a time when you are born, and that whole, like, going from inside the womb to being pushed out, like that's an experience. And like, what is that like? Well,
Yeah.
like it's insane. That's what it is. Like you have a family.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy. And then you get on the other side of it, and bad things happen in birth. But like if it's good, like then you're like, oh, that was awesome. Like,
well, no, but just here's the thing. Like, I've talked about this a little bit on this little corner, but our second child was born with a severe congenital anatomical defect, and we found that out when she was halfway through the pregnancy. So we knew it was coming, and but we also had no idea how bad it was going to be, because you can only tell so much, and then you can have all kinds of outcomes with it. And she ended up being in the NICU for 4 months.
Oh wow!
And so all the stuff that you're saying about suffering, and I don't want to put our experience when she was there anywhere near the limit of human suffering, like at all. Like,
yeah, but
it also doesn't matter, because it was the limit suffering for us. Okay.
Yeah.
And so all the stuff you're saying about it, like, it's how you become a person. I'm sitting here like, yes, no, it really is. Like, it really is how you become a person. And I talk about this all the time. So, because then when we brought her home, she also had, for like 3 or 4 months, we had around the care clock for her. Right. Every 3 hours. And it's like an hour-long process. I just had a conversation about this with my friend Corey that I met in Chino. But look, here's the thing. Like, when I look back on that, I can see daily, like, my ability to overcome like the wrongdoing in my own life, because we just had to do that. Like, we suffered it, right? I think John Vervaeke brings up suffering as being not necessarily pain, but as the loss of agency, right? Like, the dead do not suffer, the living to pass. Like, that's it. So it's like we had to suffer that. But here's what's weird is, like, when I suffered that, what I was given was agency. Like, I was given self-control because I suffered it, and you're like, that doesn't make sense. It's like, fine, I don't care, it doesn't make sense, but it happened.
Right.
It's like, and it happened, and then I look, and then, so I can take one example too of that, which was, she was having these issues with her, one of the main, it had a lot of stuff to do, it was just, everything was mixed up in here, and her lungs weren't developing, and so she was on cardiac bypass just to get oxygen in there, even though she's on a ventilator, and we're waiting for her lungs, and it's a waiting game, because when you're on cardiac bypass, you have to be on blood thinner so you don't get blood clots in the ECMO machine. And so it's like, it's like, can we get them off of there before they start having strokes, because they're getting blood across the, you're breaching the blood-brain barrier. And so we're waiting, and finally one lung, the better of the two lungs, starts responding, and it's like, okay, maybe we can do this. And we're having these conversations with the doctor. What happens if she only has one lung? Hey, that's a thing that children do. It compensates for it. Again, talking about like purpose, right? Biological purpose, right? The body's like, we only got one lung, but we know where we're headed, and we're going to get there with one lung. Right. But this is the crazy thing is that we came in one day, and they're like, you have to look at the X-rays, and her other lung was it was there. It was fully inflated and oxygenated, and we went back, and you could see that it was like getting bigger, but it wasn't oxygenated, and so it's really transparent to X-rays. And if you looked really closely, you could see it getting bigger. But I mean, it was like a 6-hour switch. It went from, she's got like a lung the 10th the size it's supposed to be, to, I mean, it was miraculous. It doesn't matter if you can see how it got there. It was miraculous.
Right.
And I remember us sitting there that night thinking, how are we so lucky?
Right.
We're like, how are we so lucky? And you think that's insane. How can you say, how are we so lucky that our daughter has 2 lungs? Because like, you deserve a child with 2 lungs. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But when I was there, all I know was it felt gratuitous. And so, and I have the notion that we should view being that way. Right? So there's the thrownness to being, right? There's this phenomenological aspect of like, what the heck? Why was I born? There's this other aspect of like, our being is utterly contingent. Like, God is being that God is the I am, right? And so, forgive me, Jacob, if you consider that irreverent, but I'm going to talk about it. And everything else, that's just given. It's all given. And so there's this, you can get in this place, and I think you can probably only get there by suffering, where you look at it and you say, oh yeah, all of this is given to me. All of this is given to me. And that is, look, I don't think fundamentally we want our circumstances organized. We want life, which is blessing. or shalom. I mean, there's a lot of different words you can use for this, but like, there's two paths that humanity tries to take to get there, and one is, well, let's just order all of our circumstances until we have shalom, and like I'm pretty sure like that we're tearing the world apart trying to do that. The other one is what Job does, which is you tell the truth all the time. If you tell the truth all the time, it's gonna hurt really bad, but at some point you get to the other side where you get to this, you go from thrownness to givenness, to this notion of things as gift, and which is interesting. So your point about how Job is restored is really interesting there too, right? Because how is he restored? He's restored by gifts.
Yeah.
Right, and then you think about the story of the New Testament story, right, which is that creation, the restoration of creation. I mean, first of all, the incarnation is a gift. I mean, like, even in Western civilization, the primary moment of gift giving is celebrating the incarnation, right? It's like, why do we do that? Why do we give each other gifts at the incarnation, to celebrate the incarnation? It's like, think about it for a little bit and you'll understand. But then the other thing is Pentecost, right? It's like, I'm going to send you the gift, right? The Paraclete is like the gift of the Holy Ghost. It's like, it is through a gift that creation was restored. You have this notion that, right? Because if you look at Job foreshadowing what's going to happen with the incarnation, you have this moment where you move from the new creation being centered in the second Adam to moving out possibly to everything through the Holy Ghost. And it's that giftness. And there's this, so but you get there through suffering. That's what's crazy. And you could argue with me about it, but I will say, in my life, right? If we're going to talk about Job being held up by speaking truly what happened to him, I would say in my life, what happened was when I suffered, that's when I see that things are given. And C.S. Lewis says something like that too in the Screwtape Letters, where he says like the best thing for a man who is basically just thinks that he's been treated unfairly is like a good dose of pain.
Right.
Like some real good pain. Like that lets you know that I mean, it's all the weird stuff. It's what Pajot was talking about at Chino, where he's like, you almost can't talk about it, but who enjoys a meal more, right? The guy, the billionaire who's sitting down to his up-teeth 5-course meal prepared by a top-class chef with the best ingredients in the world and only the best wine, and it hasn't been hungry for the last 15 years, or a monk eating a crust of bread after feasting for 3 days.
Yeah, fasting for 3.
Yeah, it's that one. Like, do you want food or do you want life from food? It's like, if you want life from food, then like, actually the way to get there is the sauce of hunger and the sauce of labor, right? Which are both forms of suffering, right? Hunger and labor are both, that's suffering. And it's like, and the thing is, that's when like food tastes really, really good. And I think about this all the time. I've got a friend who does like basically he teaches people how to do farm scale butchery. Like that's, and he's just a wonderful man. And all these meals, because he sees the final purpose of killing animals, and it's eating. And so he's also really into cooking, and it's like the dishes that poor hardworking peasants prepared don't need a bunch of weird fancy ingredients like saffron or Eastern spices, because those people were hungry, and when they ate pig fat, they were really happy for that pig fat, because it's like, because you've suffered and your body needs it. And there's this, well, Khalil Gibran says something like this. He says, it is sorrow that carves out our soul to be able to hold joy. And there's this very real notion of how much joy you're going to be able to hold in you as a being is connected to the degree to which you've gone through pain and suffering. And I don't know how you get away from that.
Well, the idea of the Trinity is that like even God doesn't get away from it. Yeah. Like it's within the Godhead. And so in our sufferings, it's there's the idea that Christ came down and partook of our sufferings, which true. Like he did. But then there's a way in which, maybe this is heretical or whatever, like in our sufferings we actually like partake of what God has done. No, that's dead on, man. I mean, St. Paul says that
he says something even crazier, like, we fill up in our own bodies what was lacking in Christ's suffering. It's whoa.
Yeah, that's probably what he was probably.
Whoa. Well, and then Pageau's been bringing up this point over and over and over from I think it's St. Maximus the Confessor. What was Christ doing on the cross? He was creating the world.
No, well, here's the thing. Let's bring it, like, this is the point of God's speech at the end of Job. Like, some people, like, man, the book is written so well. Because you read it and you're like, oh, God's a big a-hole, and he's just trying to be like, oh, look what I can do, and avoids answering the question. He doesn't do that at all. He answers the question exactly, which is like, I'm creating here.
Yeah.
And this is the answer that satisfies Job. And it's interesting because he repents, but it's like a sinless repentance. It's the repentance that you do when you move from childhood into adulthood. Like, you repent of being a child, not because being a child is bad. It's because you're becoming an adult and you can't do
childish things anymore.
And so same with the beginning of Job. It's a sinless fall. Like, he falls, but it was due to his righteousness, not because of his sin. And so you have this sinless fall and this sinless repentance at the end. But anyway, but the whole point of God's speech is all about creation. And there's so the book of Job is like basically contained. Like, you can just take the book of Job itself. Like some other books like play with other books and stuff. Like, this book's playing with Daniel and Ezekiel and whatever, Genesis but so you can look up doing like word searches and stuff, like words from where God speaks, and then find it where it's mentioned in the dialogues or in the speeches, and you'll notice like this night and day difference between how God talks about stuff and how Job and his friends talk about stuff. And Job, you can almost say that Job is running into the facts that God says apophatically. Like, he's almost coming into the negative space to which the positive that God speaks of they'll run into each other. And an example is like the lions. So Job and his friends, I don't remember if Job talks about the lions, but his friends do.
It's in the first thing that his friends say. Is it Eliphaz that speaks first?
Yeah, and he
says the lions will the lions will have their teeth broken.
Yep.
God withholds the hunger. He withholds the prey from the lions.
Yep.
And he prevents them. Yeah.
He'll scatter the young,
yep.
break the teeth of the strong lion.
Yep.
This is what the friends say, and then God comes along and
yeah.
he asks the question, just who feeds?
Who feeds the lions?
Who do you think feeds the lions? And here's a God that's like, the whole thing is filled with birthing metaphors. The ocean is born. The earth is wrapped in clouds and like a swaddling blanket. The lion cubs are hungry and God's feeding them. This is a God that's like serving all of creation and providing for it. And it's not even like the nice parts of creation. It's the lions. It's all of it. It's everything.
And like, glory be to God, because we're more lion than deer. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't want God to just take care of the nice parts of creation, because then I'd be in for it.
Yeah. Well. Here's the thing. Like God says to Job was like, because Job goes on like this fiery rant. Well, he goes on a couple fiery rants, but he talks about how basically the wicked don't suffer, and that the wicked aren't punished, and they should be,
and their children flourish.
Children flourish.
They go down to the grave fat,
right?
Fat and glossy,
right? And so God says, well, why don't you just robe up and then start striking down the wicked, and if you can do that, then I'll believe you're wise and you can handle this stuff. and people read that as if God is saying to him, I can strike down the wicked, but you can't. Like, you don't have the power to go in and strike down. But God's not even saying that he can strike down the wicked. Like, you see what he does with the wicked, which is he provides the mediator to create the sacrifice to integrate them back in again.
And then I just think of the Lord of the Rings, and you have that discussion between Bilbo and Gandalf, Frodo and Gandalf, and he says it's a pity that Bilbo didn't kill Gollum when he had the chance, and Gandalf says pity. He says it was pity that stayed his hand. He says not even the wise can see all ends.
He's like, maybe he'll still have a role to play in all this.
I have a feeling in my heart, for good or ill, that he has a role to play in all this. And I think that's one of the reasons that The Lord of the Rings has been so captivating to people, because Tolkien, I mean, look what he did there. Like, in a way that everyone can believe. That's what's amazing. In a way that everyone can believe. He said, look, here's a glimpse, right? Here's a glimpse in how it can all happen. And you can't. Yeah, this seems to be like what Job is saying. This is what you can't demand to know why Gollum is there. Yeah. Right? Like, Gollum's there, and you can't
Frodo doesn't throw the ring in without Gollum.
He can't. Right? Yeah. He actually can't do it. And so there's this sense in which they're all bound up together, and it's all tied up in this sense in which, well, I love in The Descent into Hell by Charles Williams, there's this great little exchange between Peter Stanhope, the poet, and this girl who's going to be in this play, who's just kind of prattling, and she says, don't you think nature's terribly good? And Peter Stanhope says, well, yes, but I'm a poet, and so when you say terribly good, I mean exactly that. I think it's terribly good.
Right.
And, and for her, it just goes completely over her head, and it's like, that's, in some sense, that's like what is being wrestled with what we have to wrestle with in what God's response to Job is. He says, I'm good. I am terribly good.
Yeah.
And would you stand in judgment of terrible goodness? It's like, but there's this other side, like,
right,
where all these birth metaphors, and I think of Gerard Manley Hopkins' poem as Kingfishers Catch Fire, and he says, God's grandeur. At the end of God's grandeur, he says, he's talking about the things that man has done to the world, and he says, and for all this nature's never spent, there lives the dearest freshness deep down things. And though the last light off the black west went, on the morning on the brown brink eastward springs, because the Holy Ghost over the bent world broods with warm breast and with awe bright wings. So God forbid he ever stops brooding over the bent world.
Right. Well, and yeah, God is the picture we get is God is serving everything, and for what purpose? And you get this glimpse, like terribly good is the right thing, because in the whirlwind, God is terribly good, because it's the most frightful vision of creation and what's happening, but like G.K. Chesterton writes in his essay, like there's like glimmers of hope, like a door kind of cracked and you can see the light shining through.
Okay, so like the door is that is the image for me. And like Gladiator by Ridley Scott, that's the door.
Yeah,
like that is the door. Well, it's like, and why does he only show the door? Because Ridley Scott can't tell you what's on the other side.
Yeah.
And he can't show you anything more profound than what will stir up in your soul if he just shows you the door cracked open a little bit. It's like, there's nothing that no one's art has ever said anything more profound than like what happens to you when that door gets cracked a little bit. And
yeah, well, and the whole thing is beyond conception, because like you can't judge anything then. Like, you can't judge what God is doing.
I know.
And you can't.
It's terrible, but it's also true.
Right. And then also, you can't control anything. Because one thing that...
And this is why I'm against consequentialism, right?
Well, here's the thing: is like you also have to be wise, and you have to like organize your life by rules, and like it doesn't eliminate any sort of like we just do whatever we want. Like it's literally just there are things above. Like God calls us to be righteous, to be just, to do all these things. But there are things that are happening that have to do with the continued creation of the world that are above what we can cope with. and all God asks us, all God says is, you'll have to go through it, and I promise it'll be worth it in the end.
This is why we read stories over and over and over, because I don't think we could trust if we didn't see it.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to stir up in ourselves.
Yeah, right. That's exactly it. So something like The Lord of the Rings or any of the good stories that we really love, that's what we're doing, especially the fairy tales. I mean, the fairy tales are like that in 20 minutes. You're like, why do we do that over and over and over? I mean, it's Tolkien's eucatastrophe is exactly what it is. It's the eucatastrophe. And it's like, the whole point of the eucatastrophe is that you can't see it coming. Like, that's the whole point. You can't read the story right until the eucatastrophe happens and say, oh, yeah, I know how this is going to happen. The whole point of the eucatastrophe, the reason it makes you cry is because it's so intrinsic to the story that you say, of course, but like, I never could have seen it.
Yeah.
I never could have seen it. And so it's like, that's where we're stuck, man. Where we're stuck is not being able to see it happen. You can't see it happen until it happens. And like, and so what do? You just rehearse it over and over, and you say, okay, I walked through that story where I couldn't see how it all came together, and then the prince woke up and turned and saw her. I didn't see it happen, and then, he found the golden treasure. I couldn't see how it happened, and then the princess recognized him as a beggar on the street. And over and over and over, and it's like, it's like it's not an intellectual process at all, because the whole point is you can't figure it out. It's faith.
Well, and even that, here's the mind bender. All right, so we've reached this point where we could see the goodness of God at the end of Job, and we could see how God can work through all things to his good. And that is basically what Job says in chapter 1 when he says, the Lord gives, the Lord takes away, blessed be the name of the Lord. And so Job was already there.
Yeah.
You still have to go through it.
Yeah. Yes. You don't get out of it. You don't get out of it. There's no getting out of it.
There's no secret trick where you're like, oh, now I understand what's happening. No, you still go through it. Like, that's just it. Like, you still have to go through it. People want a way to escape. People want to get out of it. People want to avoid it, but there's no avoiding it, and it's not just
God forbid, God forbid you avoid it. Actually,
well, there's even like, so like, I was a part of a missions agency, and I was attending this school, and like part of it's like 3 months of lecture and then 2 months of outreach. It's with Youth with a Mission. Do you know Youth with a Mission? Yeah. Okay, so I'm with Youth with a Mission, doing a discipleship training school, and there were two schools on the campus, and because the classes were so big, so we had ours, and there was the other one, and the other one, the leaders were like, we're gonna go to, we think God wants us to be near North Korea. We're gonna try to move the whole school there for like, this isn't even for the outreach phase. This is for like the lecture phase, and everyone's like, what? And everyone's like, yeah, we're gonna do it. We're moving the whole school. And so I was like, I want to go. I want to go suffer. I want to go like do this stuff. And I didn't get to go. I didn't get. And I heard all the stories that people told, and it was crazy and wild and kind of weird. And like, I was like, I wish I was able to go, and I wasn't able to go. And like my outreach went to like Costa Rica, and we hung out on the beach and stuff, which was awesome. But
you're
like,
also suffering.
But no, I wasn't. Here's the thing: I wanted to suffer, and I didn't. And that's also suffering. Because,
yes, that's what I'm saying. That's exactly. Yes.
So like, it's such a mind.
It's so weird, man. But it's like there's something about like just giving up. And I mean, that's what you were saying about Job. Mm-hmm. And for, there have been a couple of moments in my life where I realized like, okay, I don't see how to fit this one in. Like, I just don't see how I can fit this into my life. And there is this, you come out even, but the thing is, like, sometimes with that stuff, like, by God's grace, you end up coming out with this free, because as soon as you can't figure out, you can't put it all together. And I don't know. Maybe people with post-traumatic stress disorder have something like this, but like, that's bad. But for me, there's this like freedom of like, okay, well, now we're just doing as good as we can.
I think Job is a healing book. Like, yeah. I think you can. Yeah. I mean, I haven't tested this, but I think you can. I think it's meant to get you through stuff, because, like, I was just talking to there's an older gentleman in our church who, like, just a little backstory, but like, he never married, never had kids, had an abusive father. His grandfather was abusive to his father. His great grandfather was even more abusive to his grandfather. Like, just terrible. Then he worked in the prison system, and then he worked in special education, and he didn't. And he's telling me these stories. He's like, I didn't want to work there, but I couldn't work anywhere else. I was like, really? You couldn't work? He's like, no, God didn't have anything else for me, and I had to see all these kids that are like mentally unstable and ill and doing terrible things and weird things, and like, as he's telling me these stories, they're like the worst stories, and he's like telling them in the middle of this Bible study, and all the guys are like getting, like, all these other old guys in the room are like getting fed up with him, and like they're like, come on, like, let's stop talking about this stuff. Like, he brings it up not every week, but often enough where he's got kicked out of Bible studies and stuff, because he's like everything's rigged. God's predestined all of this. It's all a big show. And I asked him, I'm like, man, if it's all rigged and stuff, why are you coming to church? He's like, well, to be honest, I come out of fear.
Wow.
And he's like, I'm afraid of being judged. And I was just like, I admire him for, like,
yeah.
Sometimes I'm kind of like, I don't know if he's telling me the truth or whatever, but like, at least in that moment, I was like, oh, he's telling me the truth. Yeah. And like, yeah. I appreciated that. And like even my reaction, I was like, is he telling me the truth, or is he like just like hiding something? Is he like, has he like done some things in his past that like he's really regretting, that are like haunting him? And then I'm like, oh, that's what Job's friend said to Job. And I'm like it's not even like it matters if it's true or not. Yeah. It's just like, that's how people are, and I'm a person, and he's and so like it. But he's stuck. That was why I started the story. He's stuck there, and he can't get out because he won't allow himself. He won't allow himself something. I don't know. Like, I wish I could. I'll probably have more conversations with him, because I actually appreciate him and don't mind talking to him. I won't kick him out of my
You probably box. Read Job enough to be able to handle it. Well, you're not being threatened by hearing these stories about other people.
and he's just talking about fatalism and how it's all rigged and everything's predestined, and some people go to hell and some people don't, and he's like it, and I like. But there was one conversation I had with him, and it was like all just things I could have read from Job, and I was like, he's not necessarily right, but he's not necessarily wrong from where he's standing. And so like it put in like and so I'm not like, I cannot judge him. And actually what I need to do is actually, like, I can't oppose him either and like start speaking against him, but I can actually say to him, like, well, I don't even know what to say. He's got to go through it, and I don't know why, and it's not fair, and it actually pains me to see him go through it. but like, if I could just, like, he'll make it. Like, I know he will. Yeah. And maybe just like, I don't know what would help him, like, to be able to get over the hump or something. But anyway, like, I think Job gets stuck in these places, but he discovers things when he gets there, and it helps move him along. And I don't know what the principles are, or the practices, or the whatever to adopt from the book. Like, I haven't received any revelations from that or whatever, but like, it's been deeply helpful to me with dealing with people like him.
Yeah.
Because I don't have to come up with excuses to defend God or to come up with theological reasons why this or that. I can just literally say, like, you're right, it sucks, and I don't get it either.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then just sort of have faith that God has to provide those answers. There's no other, like, I can't do it. Like, I literally just, I can't, because I'm stuck in the same problems he is.
Because you're in the middle of it.
Yeah,
you're still in the middle of it. Like, this is the thing, right? Like, that we're all always in the middle of it. You know, apparently the Athenians said something like, "Count no man happy until he's dead," and I'm like, "Count no man happy until the apocalypse." Really? Because you have,
right.
I mean, you have no notion.
I know.
You know, I mean, it's like we're all living off the decisions of our great grandfathers and grandmothers. It's like you don't know, and that's why your point about, like, we still have to live righteously, I would say, actually, the need to live righteously is actually 1,000 times greater, at least, when you abandon that notion of, well, I'm gonna do the things that turn out right now. It's like, things are going badly. Yeah, you know what? You're not off the hook. You still have to keep acting rightly, because you have no idea. Right. And so it's like, you know, I think about our daughter. It's like, well, was it wrong for us to have another kid because she was sick? It's like,
right.
Well, that's like,
that'll mess you up.
That'll mess you up, and it's like, and so it's like, it's actually not that, for that one, it's like not that hard. I'm like, yeah, maybe if it had turned out worse, it would have been harder. But I'm like, no, we're just like, I have no idea. It's like, and you can't know, because it's like, what are the things that she's going to do that are going to come down? You know, they're going to be showing up 100 years later and 1,000 years later, and it's like,
yeah.
When you think about the notion of, like, telling story, I love. Last year I read A Canticle for Leibowitz. This is like whack science fiction story written by this guy who, I mean, crazy life. He was in the bombing run that destroyed Monte Cassino, which is the original Benedictine. It's like the monastery that Saint Benedict set up. He was in this terrible bombing run. I mean, talk about things that are like Job. The British intel had bad intel that there were high-ranking Nazis using it as a communications base. It was actually a bunch of Italian refugees, and so the Americans went and bombed it and just killed a bunch of innocent Italian peasants, and destroyed, like, one of the most important buildings in, like, Western civilization. And he was in. So this man's really broken when he came back, and he so then he became Catholic and had a very troubled relationship with Catholicism during his life. But he wrote science fiction short stories, and he ended up pulling 3 of them together into this novel that's all like, there's a nuclear apocalypse, and then 600 years after that, we pick up with this monk by a monastery founded by some electrical engineer during the nuclear holocaust.
Wow.
And then so we go through his life, and something happens to him, and I won't tell you because it's worth reading. And then we pick up 600 years later in that same monastery, and then we pick up another 600 years later. So it's over 1,200 years.
Oh my gosh!
And you think, well, where's all this going? And I just read The Name of the Rose, which is also about Benedictine monks in the 1200s, written by a postmodernist. And so, like, at the end of that, he just says, guess what? There actually wasn't a story. And there's no pattern. It was all meaningless. And all we can do is wait to die so that our brains stop trying to find meaning in a meaningless world. And I was like, oh, crap, we're headed in the same direction. And what A Canticle for Leibowitz does is it pulls stuff from the whole 1,200 years together in the last 10 pages of that book in a way that is so beautiful.
Like, it just all like condenses.
It just all comes into this one. It's like here. It's like right here. And it's like, you can't see that, and you can't ask to see for it.
Right.
All you can do is live for it. And then when it happens, like those misshapen frog eyes, tadpole eyes that are making it for the top of the frog. It's like it'll come back together. But you can't wait until you see it to act the right way. You can't wait until you see it to tell the truth. And like with this guy, you can't wait until it all comes together to like be there with him for however long it is you're supposed to be there with him. And so to me, that's like that's what Job has as sort of this base, like, because I don't think that you can be wise. I think every other piece of wisdom is downstream of that. Every other bit of wisdom is downstream of that.
Well, they even say like that. You mentioned it before, but that's why it opens up the wisdom books. Yeah. In like it's the first one you come to is basically like there's a limit to human wisdom. Yeah. And here's this story about someone that suffers something that's beyond, like, you can't explain it. As soon as you start explaining it, you fall into all the terrible mistakes, explanations and that the friends do, or you're trying to like, anyway. But here's something beyond human wisdom, and then that's where you start wisdom. And it's like some things are just beyond us. And then so like what do you, which is helpful, because like what do you do when someone's actually suffering? Like they don't need a bunch of explanations or apologetics or whatever. Like they literally need just someone to help them through that, just go through it with them, and without trying to figure out why, and without even having to like regulate. Like if you're mad about it and you're honestly mad, like honestly be mad about it and tell God about it. And if God's not there for you, say that God's not there for you. Like you don't have to pretend anything. And like it's just part of being a limited finite being, is like you don't have a universal perspective sometimes. Sometimes you have your perspective. And actually that is insanely valuable because like it's so look, no, this is what's wild is that, say Thomas Aquinas and other thinkers back then, they understood that was the reason why, that was why they thought that the angels would never be redeemed, because they didn't have that limited time-bound perspective. It was like, oh really, you and me being in time and being finite is the reason that there's redemption can happen for us. Right. And so you look at that, you say it's insanely valuable. I'm like, that's the most precious thing to me. That should be. Yeah, is that I'm in the middle of it. Yeah, that God's not holding me to my judgments because I'm just too small to really see. And He says, "Yeah, well, wait. I'm going to wait on you. I'm going to wait until you've seen more." And that's His mercy to us. Yeah, because God's not like snapping His fingers and making robots, or this isn't all happening as some sort of like, this isn't like a simulation or a trick or something. Like if God actually wanted to have real sons and daughters, this is how He does it. This is how it's done, and real sons and daughters are grown. They're not. He's not snapping His fingers and making them. And so, like, there's an actual real process that's going on that's actually really forming our souls and our spirits, and like that's just how it is, and that's how you become real, and that's God's. God wants you to be real. and then His promise is that it will all be worth it, and nothing will be wasted. Which you can't see. Which you don't. Get there. Yeah, if you try to calculate it, it's impossible. Like you'll go crazy trying to figure it out, and that's part of. But you can sense it. So like it's the opposite of trying to sort things out intellectually or breaking it into pieces and trying to see how the systems work or whatever, which I would say is what the friends do, where Job just sort of goes with his own perspective, but what he's rewarded with is the awe of God, which is he said, "I've heard of you before, but now I see you." And so can I just say, that should be it for you. Is to go from there to there. Like that should be it for every single person. It's like, I've heard of you and now I've seen you. There's nothing else to ask for, actually. Right. That's it. There just isn't anything better. Well, and so that vision and that sense, like you can actually feel it, you can sense it, and it's something like the sense of meaning or the sense of like you can't necessarily articulate it, but you know what it is when you encounter it,
which is kind of. I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you, but you're just throwing some really good stuff at me. I mean, like, you want to talk about poetry, right? It's like, well, first of all, Job has written poetry. It's in verse, and I think Lord Alfred Tennyson said it was the greatest poem of the ancient world.
It has to be.
Yeah, I agree with him.
Yeah.
And when you're reading a poem, you get that, oh, this means something. Do I know everything that it means? No, I have no idea. But, like, I know it does. Mm-hmm. It's that. And again, in the same way that narratives are teaching us to trust that the eucatastrophe is going to come, I think poetry can teach us to trust to unseen depths of meaning.
Well, it's like it's the crack through the door where the light's leaking through. Like that's what it like because you say, you know, you're like, well, justify God in the world of suffering, and you're just like, well, look at the whole world. Look how beautiful it is, and look at like all the insane things that are happening, and both, you know, like it's so amazingly overwhelming in all degrees that like what can I say? Like how can I judge any of it? And so, you know, and this gets into like that is actually a healing thing because it actually gives you a place to be.
Yes. Yes, it does.
And it actually gives like every like it gives like if you have trauma or whatever, it gives your trauma a place. Like it doesn't have to be cut off and thrown away. Like it actually finds a place where it can
all of you.
Rest
all of you.
And
yeah.
Sit and like,
so in the traditional mass, there's this prayer that's just taken from the Psalms, where the priest, before he drinks the chalice, he says, "What shall I render unto the Lord for all that he has done for me? I will take the chalice of salvation and give him thanks." And you know, from the Catholic perspective, there's the notion is of exactly what you're saying, which is it's all completely beyond us. So what do? Well, we do the thing that God has given us to do, which is to participate in the offering of the Son to the Father, which is the only possible thing that could ever be worthwhile, right? Because what do you and I have to give to God? Except what he's given us, which is himself. And there's almost this joke in the Mass, and I hesitate to call it that, but it's like, but it's like we're given this bread and wine, right? And we recognize that it's been given to us. So then we're like, God, here's this bread and wine. We offer it to you. And what does God do when we offer that to him? He says, okay, I'm going to transform that into myself. And you're like, okay, wait, hold on. And then what do we do with that is we give that back to God and we say, okay, you've given us yourself.
Here you are.
Here you are. And then what God says is, okay, fine, eat it. I'm going to give you myself back. And so there's this thing where it's like, you can't outdo him.
Right.
But he's also given you a way to actually appropriately respond to him, which is
cool.
So far beyond anything you could have ever done. Right. Like, how could you have ever made return to God?
Right.
And he says, here it is. I'll give it to you. And I think you even see that in Job, which is, it's what you're saying. It's the making of the mediator. Because that's the notion of Christ has come. And now what is he doing? He's making us little Christs. Right? And so what happens to Job is what's supposed to happen to all of us. And, you know, I don't know how you feel about the whole notion of like the intercession of the saints, but like when I started to take it seriously, I was like, well, okay, we're supposed to look like Christ, and what does he do? Well, he holds the world together. And you would think that the closer you got to Christ, the more you would act like him. It's like, yes, okay, so then when I die and I'm in heaven with him, what am I going to be doing? I'm going to be doing what Christ does all the time, which is interceding for the world. It's like, okay, so of course St. Francis is interceding for me, and of course St. Wolfgang is, and of course St. Joseph, and on and on and on and on. It's like, well, yeah, because they look even more like him now than they did when they were on this earth. And so there's this just like the whole thing. I mean, yeah, it's just beyond words. It's totally beyond words. And then you think, well, why are the martyrs held up? It's like, yeah, that's why the martyrs are held up. It's like,
yeah.
Man. And so then what do? We build the world on the blood of the martyrs, right? And it's like, I mean, you're wearing the San Francisco shirt and hat right there. It's like,
yeah.
You go to California and it's like, when I was there for Chino, I was like, wait a minute. This whole southern half of the state is just named after the saints, man. It's like
Right.
Santa Barbara, San Bernardino, Los Angeles,
San Diego.
yeah, San Diego, and it's like San Francisco. It's like, and on and on. It's like Sacramento. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, that's what's
Los
going
Angeles.
on here. Los Angeles. Yeah, it's like, oh my goodness. So there's this thing in where it's like when you do that, like God is actually still like, look, it's still open for us. It's not like it's over by any means. It's not like, well, I needed Job and I needed Jesus. He's like, if you do that, if you will take onto yourself that suffering and you'll bear it truthfully, then like I will use you to create the world.
Yep, exactly.
Like that's what's on the table.
Yeah.
And like, but come on, like as a parent, it's so obvious too. It's like, if I won't suffer for my children, then they'll be bad kids. They won't be people. Like they literally won't be people. But if I suffer as a parent, then they'll be people. And they might even be good people.
Right.
And like, what could I possibly do for the world that's more than
Making good people.
making good people? It's like when John Vervaeke said that at Chino, there's like a whole corner of the room that just started yelling.
Oh, yeah.
We just lost our minds. We're like, yes, he said it. He said the thing. He said the thing.
He said the thing.
It's like, that's on offer for us. And so if you don't, oh man, it's so hard because, but then you go back to your mind bender, which is like, you don't get out of it just by knowing.
Yeah.
You don't get to be like,
Job chapter 1.
yeah, you don't get to be like,
Job chapter
oh,
1.
I know that I have to suffer, so I'm good now. It's like,
No, there's no cheat code.
There's no cheat code.
So when you're in it, you're in it, and
You're
you can
in it.
basically say I'm in it.
Yeah.
And then you can be like, I'm not happy about it.
and I'll find out later. And I had this weird experience.
Well, that's why what Sherry was saying, like, just keep going.
Yeah.
Like, don't lie. Don't lie.
Just hold on to your integrity.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
And then, and you'll wake up on the other side of it. Like, that's the thing. I remember when we were doing that home care, and like, it wasn't like me and my wife made it through that. I mean, so many people, but it actually took me about a half a year to be able to remember those 2 months. Like they were gone. They were just gone I was like, it was summer and I was home. I don't know what else happened. I mean, and so there's this just, but the beautiful thing is that you don't have to hold, the coherence of those things isn't inside of you. Like, Jess doesn't have to make the story. It's not redeemed when you figure it out, right? Because that's how there's this whole notion of, well, if I just tell the right story, or if I can figure it out, or if I can just make this work, or, no, that's not how it works. Like, you could do all the right things and suffer the whole time and die and not see it, and it would still be okay. You still would have done the thing. You still would have done the thing, because it's not about you bringing it together. It's something outside of you.
And there's even, like, you were talking about the future pulling. Like,
yeah.
Sometimes, like, I think, like, maybe the reason why I do keep going through something difficult is because I do realize it's worth it someday.
Yeah.
So like,
because how else could you? I mean, and Job does. Job isn't just, he's not just ground in the dirt the whole time, right? He has the clearest prophetic insight of the incarnation of anyone in the Old Testament. Like, there is no one else in the Old Testament who says, I know that in my flesh, even after I've died, I will stand and see my Redeemer. Right. No one else says that. And so it's like, it's not like there's no moment where he sees, but then he's back under the water and drowning.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like when Stephen is like being stoned. At the moment of being stoned, he looks up to heaven and he sees Christ coming on the clouds.
Yeah. And what's better than that? I mean, that's the thing. Seeing Christ coming on the clouds, that's the thing, right? It means Job is coming back in glory, basically, right? Because Job's pointing towards Christ. He's the good king. He's the good leader. He's the wise man. He's the father to all of us. He's the intercessor. He's the one who brings in everyone's riches and then gives it all back to them, right? And it's like, when you see Christ coming, I mean, man, we can't even... We don't even know what that feels like anymore, but then everyone loves the Lord of the Rings, and everyone, when Aragorn's crowned king of Gondor, it's like, we get it. Like, there's still enough of that in this somewhere, and like, that's what he sees. He's seeing what's actually happening. That's what Stephen gets to see. I mean, he just gets and I mean, think about St. John of the Apocalypse. Like, he doesn't have the vision when he's hanging out as a bishop somewhere having a great time. It's when he's in exile, away from everyone that he knows and loves. The Blessed Virgin Mary's been taken up, is gone, right? Come on, like, if you're Christ's disciple, he gets to have the Blessed Virgin Mary in his household. It's like, that's amazing. But then she's already gone, and so he's like, Christ is gone from the physical presence of his life. The mother of his beloved is gone, and he's exiled on some island away from Ephesus. And it's like, and then he gets that, and he gets to see. It's like, it's in that suffering is. I have to go.
Dude, this was epic.
Yeah, I'm going to be chewing on a lot of this. You're going to hear me on the internet and be like, man, I was having this conversation with Jess and this thing came up.
Dude, I'll post this on my channel, man.
Awesome.
It'll be streaming live. Well,
awesome.
Not live, but it'll be up there on the tubes.
On the tubes. Yeah.
But if you want to talk some more, like, I could talk about this all day, every day, and there's like still stuff that I hadn't talked about yet.
Fantastic. I know you make a first pass, and like you make a first pass at it, and we're getting all of our stuff out, and I'm sure there's. I mean, honestly, like, just on like the textual level of Job, I mean, you clearly spent so much time with it. I would love to just work through way more of that, and
well, me and Sherry in the podcast, we go through every single chapter.
Oh, fantastic!
Like, if you wanted to go through that, and she has all sorts of good insights about all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And so you can definitely check that out too.
That'd be great. Wow.
And then the Dixieland band is playing now.
I know, that's awesome. It was very upbeat for a conversation about Job.
I know, right?
If they could have done when the Saints come marching in or something, that would have.
That would be. I have thought about like a reading of Job as comedy, like, because
have you read
Mel Brooks does.
Have you read Frederick Buechner's The Gospel's Tragedy, Comedy, and Fairy Tale? You would love that.
Really?
Oh yeah. I think he actually brings Job into it a lot too.
Really?
Yeah.
Because
it is a comedy, but it is a comedy.
Well, yeah, technically it is a comedy, but I think like Mel Brooks does this because he'll have tragic characters in his films and his films are just straight up comedy, like they're so funny, but the characters are completely tragic.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm doing, because if I don't physically start detaching myself, I'm going to be here for another hour. I'm not going to have dinner, and we're going to be late to the church service that we came here for.
Thanks, Ted, for joining me, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.